Below is the revised version of the text from your provided file. Improved grammar, punctuation, commas, full stops, question marks, etc., and proper formatting to ensure it is clear and suitable for text-to-speech software. I have removed the asterisk as requested, ensured the story remains complete without any missing content, and maintained the original narrative flow. The text is now grammatically correct and properly punctuated for better pronunciation by text-to-speech. Software. The annual Rivertown Tech Expo buzzed with polished shoes, crisp suits, and the low hum of cutting-edge engines. Engineers and inventors from all over the state gathered to showcase innovation and ego. A shiny hybrid combustion prototype stood at the center of the expo tent, the pride of Volterra Industries. But it had just sputtered and died mid-demo. Stunning. The audience and annoying the technicians, representatives from Chromax Mechanics, TechLinks Dynamics, and other certified expert companies surrounded the engine, looking confused but pretending they weren't. Just a minor glitch, someone muttered. Clint Maddox, a humble small-town mechanic in oil-stained jeans and a faded cap. He'd only brought her to learn. She was bright and sharp, but the sneers and sideways glances from the suit-wearing techs had already begun. Guess the farmer folk came to watch magic, one whispered. Clint kept silent. Ellie watched. Ellie wasn't fazed. She had always loved machines grease, gears, engines. Her dad raised her on them. The sound of a faulty shaft or the smell of overheating coolant told her more than a diagnostic screen ever could. As the so-called certified engineers debated over circuit boards and fuel maps, Ellie's eyes followed the tubing connectors and sensors like she was tracing an old, familiar map. One of the engineers from TechLinks, a tall man with gelled hair and a dismissive smirk, noticed her gaze. "You looking for the gear shifter, kid?" he joked. Laughter followed. Ellie said nothing, but Clint did. "She might be able to help," he said calmly. "She's fixed worse with less." That set them off again. "Right," said a Chromax supervisor. "Let's get the teenager with pigtails to fix the $1 million prototype." Ellie tucked her hair behind her ears and studied the intake. "Valve, it's not getting enough air." The crowd paused just for a moment, not because they believed her, but because her voice was confident, unshaken. A woman from Volterra chuckled. "And how would you know that, darling?" Ellie looked at her. "Because your pressure regulator's too tight, and your thermal bypass is stuck half-closed." A few engineers shifted uncomfortably. The man with the smirk leaned forward, mocking. "Well then, by all means, show us." The space opened like a stage as Ellie walked up to the silent engine. Clint didn't stop her. He just stepped back, watching with a quiet kind of pride only a father, who's worked with his child in silence, understands. Ellie bent down, her fingers moving fast but precise. She located the intake valve and loosened it slightly, then found the thermal switch and tapped it gently with the back of a wrench. The engineers watched, still smirking, but now with nervous curiosity. The room had grown quiet, eerily so. The only sounds were metal clicking against metal and the light shuffle of Ellie's worn sneakers on the expo floor. She didn't rush. She reconnected one bypass wire, straightened a sensor near the combustion module, and adjusted the fan timing. By a few degrees, her movements weren't lucky guesses. They were muscle memory. Things she'd done in her dad's garage 100 times over. A junior engineer from Chromax whispered, "That's actually the correct reset order." His supervisor elbowed him silent. Ellie stepped back. "Try it now," she said, wiping her hands on her jeans. The man with the smirk scoffed. "Sure, let's humor the child." He pressed the ignition. The engine coughed, then roared too. Life smoother than it had the entire day. Its hum filled the room like music. There were no hitches, no stalls, just perfect performance. No one laughed anymore, not even the ones who'd started it. The head technician from Volterra stepped forward slowly, peering into the open engine compartment as if trying to find the ghost who did the work. You? How did you know the timing interval? He asked. Ellie shrugged. Your system's similar to a racing quad I rebuilt last year. As the same tech looked at Clint. You taught her this? Clint nodded once. Or rather, she figured most of it out while I watched. Ellie backed away toward her dad, suddenly feeling the weight of eyes on her. She hadn't done it for fame. She just couldn't stand watching something stay broken when it didn't have to. And while they stood there trying to look smart, she saw the solution like it was written in front of her. Sometimes experience came without certification. Sometimes brilliance wore sneakers and oil, SMUDGS. As the engine continued to purr, the crowd began to murmur. Phones came out. Photos were taken, and the laughing experts now stood awkwardly, unsure of how to reclaim the space they thought they'd owned. A young woman from TechLinks, maybe the only one not embarrassed, smiled and gave Ellie a thumbs up. You just made a lot of people very nervous, she whispered. Ellie smiled shyly. I just fixed what they wouldn't. Clint put a hand on her shoulder. That's my girl. Outside the Expo tent, the sounds of applause began to rise. Ellie didn't understand what the big deal was. To her, it was just another engine, another fix. But inside that tent, a silent truth settled in. The mechanic's daughter had done in minutes what teams of experts couldn't do in hours. Oh, they would never forget it. The video of Ellie fixing the engine went viral that very night. It had been recorded by a student volunteer from the river town, Polytechnic booth, and within hours, it was trending on Mecca and other forums. Titles like Teen Girl Outsmarts, Corporate Engineers and Mechanic's Daughter, Fixes in 3 minutes flat circled the web like wildfire. Clint didn't care. For all the attention, but Ellie's name started making its way across inboxes and invite lists. By morning, she had over a dozen emails, including one from Dynatech Research Group, offering her a free scholarship interview. That day they returned to their small garage in Dunridge, trying to shake off the echo of applause and flashing cameras. Clint made coffee while Ellie stared at the toolbox. Was it luck, Dad? She asked. Clint shook his head with a proud smile. That was you. That was years of work, patience, and one sharp brain. Back in Dunridge, the townsfolk had already heard the story. Customers who'd once ignored the greasy garage now stopped by, just to peek inside. Some brought old engines. Not because they needed repairs, but just to ask, is the girl who fixed the Expo motor here? Ellie laughed it off. She still cleaned spark plugs and helped Clint organize wires. But now even the local news team came around for a clip. Clint, however, wasn't impressed by fame. One win doesn't make you a legend, he said as they closed shop. But it does mean folks will start testing you harder. And he was right. A week later, a man in a slate-gray car arrived. He introduced himself as Mr. Hale from Mecker Central Academy, a private engineering school. We'd like Ellie to attend our 6-month mentorship, he said. We believe. She's gifted. Ellie looked at her father. She didn't speak right away. That night, Ellie sat on the porch with her dad. Fireflies blinked lazily around them, and the smell of motor oil still lingered on their shirts. What if I'm not ready? She asked. What if they expect too much? Clint leaned back in his chair, his voice calm. Ellie, you didn't ask to be noticed, but you were. That's not pressure. It's purpose knocking. And it's okay to feel nervous? She nodded slowly. What if I mess up? Then you'll learn, he said. That's what real engineers do. She rested her head on his shoulder for a moment. The next morning, they packed a small suitcase. Ellie wore her favorite jeans, and a shirt with a tiny grease stain near the sleeve, one she said brought her good luck. Before leaving, she turned back toward the garage and whispered, I'll be back, but different. Clint smiled. He knew that was true. The Mecker Central Academy campus was like another world. Glass buildings, voice-controlled labs, and robots that moved like dancers. Ellie felt like a greased puzzle piece in a showroom of polished steel. Most of the other students came from elite prep schools, had expensive tools, and walked like they already belonged. During her first session, one student laughed when she pulled out a hand-me-down socket wrench. Antique much, he said. Ellie said nothing. she didn't need to. That same day, they were all asked to diagnose a sabotaged microfuel system. The others read data on tablets. Ellie closed her eyes and listened. "It's the pulse feed. They're firing 2 strokes too soon," she said. The instructor blinked. "Correct." The room fell silent again. Ellie had spoken softly, but her words hit hard. That night, she called Clint. "You were right," she whispered. "It's harder here, but I belong." As weeks passed, Ellie became known for her hands-on brilliance. Where others relied on simulations, she relied on instinct. When a 3D printed drone failed mid-flight, she caught it mid-air and fixed the loose propeller with a hairpin. When a hydraulic project flooded the floor, she built a bypass with duct tape and a bent spoon. She didn't brag. She didn't even talk much. But slowly, the same students who once rolled their eyes now asked her for advice. "How do you know the flow rate was off?" one girl asked. "I didn't," Ellie replied. "I just listened to it." Instructors called it intuition. Clint called it heart. But Ellie knew it wasn't magic. It was Dunridge. It was watching. Her dad fixed tractors under moonlight. It was every greasy engine she rebuilt alone. Every bolt she turned while he worked beside her. Her skill wasn't an accident. It was inherited. Then came the final test. A timed rebuild of a failed modular engine in front of a panel. 10 students, 5 engines, 30 minutes. Clint had driven up to watch. He stood at the back, arms folded, heart thudding.
Ellie stood
Calmly at her station, no gloves, no panic, just focus. As soon as the clock started, she moved. Her hands danced. Disconnect, align, calibrate, tighten, test. While others hesitated over wiring diagrams, Ellie trusted her gut. She finished in 23 minutes. When her engine purred to life, the judges leaned in. One whispered, "This girl, she's not just good, she's something else." The head of Mecker turned to Clint. "Mr. Maddox, would you be open to our offering her a full scholarship?" Clint smiled, eyes damp. "Ask her yourself," he said. "She makes her own decisions." Ellie didn't say yes to the scholarship right away. She stood outside the Mecker auditorium after her test, staring at the evening sky. The same hands that once tightened rusty bolts on tractors were now being asked to represent Mecker in a national junior engineering challenge, the youngest ever invited. She called Clint. "I don't want to leave home forever," she said. Clint's voice was steady, proud. "You're not leaving, sweetheart. You're expanding your map." After a pause, he added, "Just don't forget the garage that raised you." She smiled through misty eyes. The next day, she accepted the scholarship. But on one condition: she'd return to Dunridge every month and teach younger girls in rural areas how to work with tools. The Mecker board, surprised but impressed, approved. "We didn't just find a genius," one instructor said. "We found a leader." Lee didn't want to be famous. She just wanted to be useful.
back in Dunridge. The garage hadn't changed.
Same creaky floor, same oil smell, same flickering light bulb near the toolbox. But everything felt different. Clint had painted a small wooden sign over Ellie's old workbench, Ellie's Corner, where ideas start small. She saw it and froze. "You kept my station." Clint nodded. Wasn't mine to change. The first girl she mentored showed up the very next Saturday. 10-year-old Mia, shy, curious, holding a screwdriver upside down. Ellie knelt beside her, just like Clint used to. "We'll start with changing a filter. But we're going to get dirty." Mia grinned. Soon, more girls came. Some from farms. Some from trailer parks. Some who'd never touched a wrench in their lives. Ellie taught them all with patience, grit, and a spark that couldn't be taught in textbooks. What started as one fix at an expo had become a movement in motion. Months passed. News about Ellie's workshop reached the Forge Tech Rising Talent Program, a national competition that scouted young engineers with real-world impact. Ellie didn't apply. Someone else did, a former instructor from Mech or .1 Friday evening. Clint found her under a lifted pickup, grease all over her arms. "Got a letter," he said, handing her a sleek envelope. She opened it slowly, Her eyes widened. "They want me to compete," she said, "with real engineers nationally." Clint smiled. "You've always been one of them?" The event would take place in Lakeside City, and she'd have 24 hours to solve a problem no one had seen before. Ellie didn't pack fancy clothes or high-tech gadgets. She brought a toolbox her dad gave her at age 9, and the same lucky shirt with a grease stain on the sleeve. At the competition, other contestants raised eyebrows. But the judges remembered her name and her fix. The challenge was simple on paper, but brutal in execution. Rebuild a compact hydrogen engine with unknown faults using only limited tools and a parts bin. Ellie didn't panic. She smiled. It reminded her of home. For 21 hours straight, she worked quietly, methodically. Other competitors raced. Ellie listened, felt, adjusted. When her engine ran on the first try, the judges clapped. When they opened it for inspection and saw how she'd rerouted to valves, using bent copper washers and thread sealant from a pen tube, they stood in awe. One judge whispered, "She's rewriting how we think." That night, under the glowing lights of the Lakeside Auditorium, Ellie Maddox was announced as the youngest ever Forge Tech National winner. Reporters asked about her training. She simply said, "My dad taught me how to fix problems without manuals. That's all I ever did." Clint, watching from the crowd, smiled with quiet tears in his eyes. After the awards Ellie was offered, corporate roles, city contracts, and university partnerships. She accepted none of them. Instead, she opened her own workshop back in Dunridge, Ellie's engine shed, where she continued to train girls, help farmers, and even consult on rural tech projects. Mecker sent interns to her shop for training. Forge Tech named a scholarship after her. She never stopped learning, never stopped getting her hands greasy. "The world's changing," she told Mia one day. "And someone's got to make sure the small-town kids know they belong in it too." Clint eventually retired, but he came by daily just to watch, sip coffee, and sometimes help when her students got stuck. The garage never looked fancier, but now it echoed with new voices, laughter, and the click-clack of bright futures being built one bolt at a time. Years later, a little girl asked Ellie during a tour, "Did they really laugh at you at the Expo?" Ellie nodded. "They did. And what did you do?" Ellie smiled, wiping her hands with a rag. "I fixed what they couldn't." The girl's eyes widened. "I want to be like you." Ellie bent down and looked her in the eye. "No," she said softly, "you're going to be better." And with that, she handed the child her first wrench, just like Clint had once handed her hers. Because in the end, the laughter never mattered. What mattered was what came after. The quiet, steady hands of a mechanic's daughter, changing the world one fix at a time.